Yo, yo, yo.
Yes, yes, yes. What's up, brother?
All good, man. All good.
How hot are you from 1 to 1 million?
Mate, if you see sweat dripping down my forehead, it's because I've just literally switched the fan on because it's making a little bit of noise. But I might have to just switch it on and unmute, and you might have to take the rest of the call, mate. But it's
It's crazy, right? I mean, we here in Cyprus are used to, but also we are equipped, right? There are ACs everywhere, but you guys in the UK and in the rest of Northern Europe must be baking now.
yeah, it's pretty bad. But hopefully we're looking like a cooler next week. So just let's get through this, and yeah, we should be all right.
Let's get the chat going. Tell us, guys, where are you joining from? And we're gonna spice it up a bit today. We're not gonna tell how your week went from 1 to 10 and how hot is it where you are joining us from. And I'll start. Currently, right now in Limassol, Cyprus, it's 32 degrees, which, believe it or not, for us is actually quite mild. It's still not full summer. It's still not super humid. It's manageable. How is the UK? How is your side of the
Did you say yours is 32?
32, 32, yes.
Yeah, so it's saying 31 here, but it feels a lot warmer. Like
Feels like 3002.
three, yeah. T-shirt weather. No t-shirt weather. Yeah. But
So Ash,
yes,
what's the water cooler for the people joining for the first time?
the water cooler is it's quite apt because you'll need a lot of it. Water cooler is a place where we just get together, we talk about anything brand, creative, marketing, business. But the slight twist is that we have, as Martin likes to say, we always have guests that are much smarter than us to share.
Which is easy.
Yeah, which is very easy. To share their knowledge on their specific domain of expertise. And we always keep them a secret. So they're always a secret guest. And today is no exception. And we'll get into that in a bit. Did I miss anything?
No, you did well. You did well. So Jeff is from Metro Philly and a beautiful low 80s Fahrenheit. How much is 80 Fahrenheit in Celsius? Fahrenheit in Celsius, I'm going to tell you, in 26 degrees. Pooh, Jeff, you're having a good time, mate.
Yeah.
Here in Europe, we're absolutely boiling and baking. He's having a good time. So, Ash, shall we?
Today's episode, we had quite a lot of registrations on this one, so I don't know how well it's resonating with people out there if they're in kind of this stage in life. But it's called Corporate Playbooks to Building Brands from Scratch. So going from your, I suppose, employed world of and maybe leaving that and creating your own playbook and creating your own company, and that's kind of I think the guest that we have today is just is two things here, very special to us because we've worked with her on a brand strategy, and it was special to us because it was the first time we did it collaboratively as WAM, myself, Martin, and Wes. But then the other thing is as well, we learn lots off from her because she's just a powerhouse in terms of what she's done. She's the chair and board advisor across multiple businesses. She's CEO of Star Power and co-founder of Pause.com, to name but a few. So like I said, she has extensive experience scaling brands, driving commercial growth, and navigating leadership across startups and established organizations. Shall we bring her on, Martin? Let's give it up for Hilary Lee.
What's up, Hilary?
Hello, look, I'm loving that introduction. Not much for me to live up to there.
Well, it's all true, isn't it? I mean, you've I probably missed loads as well there.
I was gonna say, it's all true, and a couple of more awesome things to add on that. How are you coping, Hilary, with the heat?
Do you know what? I see your 32 degrees, Ash, and I raise you to 34, and I also raise you with midlife menopause as a woman. So altogether, I feel like I'm definitely the one deserving the most love right now, and the most water cooling.
Pray, that's what you need. So let's get started then, Hillary. Let's go back to before you started businesses. What were you doing? And move us into the journey of why you've decided to go out and start the businesses, and which one was the first business you started?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to be a teacher, believe it or not, but I left university with a bit of debt, like we all do, I think. And I went to work for Boots the Chemist, as it was known then. And I worked in corporate. I worked for Boots for 18 years, so pretty much from university. And I was so lucky that I worked for some brilliant people. And I even say today, the best introduction I could have into corporate life and understanding commercial world, Boots were brilliant for me. So whilst I was there, I was merchandising trainer. I'm probably better known because I was the head of Number 7, which is the #1 UK cosmetics and skincare brand, and I led them through quite a big relaunch with many, many people, because in a business like Boots, everything is done with pretty vast teams. And then I ran parts of their commercial team, so hair care, which I loved, and toiletries. I went from Boots to PZ Cussons, so if you know Imperial Leather and Original Source, Saint-Tropez. I worked with them for a little while, and then I went to Morrison's Supermarkets, where I supported their non-food business. So I didn't work in food so much, but I worked on pharmacy and baby. And I'll tell you what's really interesting is everyone thinks corporate is like one thing, but the culture between the businesses, those two businesses in particular, is so different. Boots is a really intellectual business. It's really focused on data gathering and insight and consensus to a large extent. Whereas Morrison's was much more entrepreneurial, much more instinctive, kind of backed up with a little bit of data, especially then, because it was back in 2011. But the culture between those two businesses, it was a massive learning curve for me. It was a massive learning curve. And then after I left Morrison's, I went and did a bit off piece, which is when I set up my first consultancy business. I actually supported a modelling agency and a cashback business, which was looking at how you earn money back, basically, when you pay for things, for want of a better word. So that was my first step into non-corporate. And then I went back into corporate for a while. I went back to Holland & Barrett, where I was on the board with them for a few years. I ran their trading functions, their innovation function, and learned something different again, because they were kind of a blend between Boots and Morrison's. They were more, they're probably more data-driven than Morrison's were at the time, but perhaps more entrepreneurial than Boots. So it kind of was a nice blend for me going to work with. And I learned loads. And again, I learned most from the people, as well as I learned the market that I love the most. So when I was at Boots, I loved hair care, because for me, hair care is so transformational. We've been talking about it like ourselves. Like, it's the thing that people talk about, good hair days, and it really has a big impact on how you feel about yourself. And I loved that, working in that business. And I feel the same now that I found my kind of home in wellness and beauty, that it's that sense of trying to input things into people's lives for the better. So when I left Holland & Barrett, which was at the start of COVID, not necessarily the ideal time to believe in corporate, that's when I went back to doing some consultancy. And I was consulting for brands who wanted to work with Holland & Barrett. And that's how I got involved with Star Power, actually. Star Power was a brand in Holland & Barrett. And the founder, Johnny, said, look, would you help us out on various bits and pieces? And then I've ended up now kind of went in as a CEO on a fractional basis for about 3 years. And I was consulting lots of other businesses. I was doing bits because I like to mentor. I like to support people coming through, especially women, but not just women. I kind of like the idea of, if you can help the next generation of entrepreneurs and people, that's part of our responsibility as leaders in industry. And I was working with all of them. And then I suddenly thought, you know what, why don't I create this value for myself? Why don't I see if I can do something that I believe passionately in? I was going through, well, I still am going through the menopause, and nobody likes to talk about it. Like, it's this kind of horrible little secret of women bleed and flood, and you're having hot flushes, and you feel pretty crap, and you're tired, and you're just meant to carry on and soldier on like it's not happening. And for me, that just didn't resonate with me. It just didn't resonate that that's how I should live the next however many years of my life. And so that's how Paused was born, and that's how I ran into you lovely people. Having worked with Wes in a previous life, I've always adored Wes and his creative genius and input. But I think really it was that time that we had doing some brand workshopping that helped me refine what it was I wanted. Not that it wasn't about product, it was about what do we want to stand for? What position do we want to take that help women feel empowered, that help women feel like they've got a voice and they're not shying away in the corner just because this whole Karen, which I despise with a passion, that basically says middle-aged or midlife women shouldn't be heard, and that's not really me. So that's how it came about, and then since then I do a few other bits and pieces and businesses and support them. But it's been an interesting journey, and I've loved it. I've genuinely loved it, and I love the people that I work with, like yourselves, that have come across my pathway.
I mean, that's crazy that you started firstly in COVID. I want to know, like, what really drove that decision? Like, what is it? Was it just a burning desire to do something yourself for a long time, and that was for some absurd reason the right time within COVID, or what was it?
It definitely wasn't that I did get to the stage thinking I'm at the choice now in my life. I've got a little bit more financial security because I'm not starting out kind of, and I do think it's really hard to be entrepreneurial if you've not had any basis to build up any sort of safety net. So I did have a bit of a safety net. But I think I just got to the stage in my life when I didn't want to work with people I didn't like. And that sounds awful, but in corporate world, generally I like most people. But being self-employed and then working in businesses, you can take choices going, I want to work with like-minded people who feel like I do about life. And I don't want to spend my life having to build a consensus with every single person who exists in every part of business. I want to kind of probably put myself out there a little bit more and maybe trust my own judgment. And it is scary, you know, I don't like being front and center, but I think what I've learned is people connect with people more than they connect with product. They connect with product through the people. And so the time was right. I think maybe my confidence was there. I still think it happened a little bit by default. I mean, I'd love to say I had this great intentional plan and these things happen, but it kind of naturally evolved into me going, you know what, I think this is it. I think it's time for me to back myself. Because it's very hard. It's hard to move from a life of getting paid every 4 or 5 weeks and having a massive support network around you to chasing an invoice that's not being paid or having to create your own value. And that's genuinely what you have to do. But it is also exceptionally rewarding and exciting. So it kind of happened maybe because I left H&B. And then when I did leave Holland & Barrett, I was surprised at how many people reached out to me actually and said, look, you know, good luck, and could we maybe call on you at certain points in time? And
what was the scariest part? You mentioned that it was scary. What was the scariest part and why?
I think the thing in a corporate, there's a safety net. So for the most part, you're making decisions. You're making a lot of collective decisions. There is a big ownership, particularly when you're senior in any business. And your position in a corporate business is partly sheltering the people that you lead from some of the stuff that comes down and partly supporting those people to try and deliver the best of themselves, as well as in any retail environment, hit your commercial targets, hit your customer targets, all those kind of things. I think the scary bit is that safety net's gone. So you're very much, and you haven't got 2,000 Mintel reports or data sources or things that you can just ask a member of the team going, can you go and research this? You've got to be more self-reliant and probably a bit more trust your instinct as opposed to trust your colleagues. And I think the biggest thing is in corporate, I think you can spend a long time not making a decision until you know it's 100% right. Whereas what I find out now is I'm better making a good decision that's 60% right than maybe waiting for the perfect decision that's 100% right, because the biggest advantage you've got working for yourself is you've got pace and you've got mobility and you've got kind of a speed of reaction that you don't have if you've got a big corporate body to move through. So that's the scariest bit, but it's also probably the bit that I think allows you to be more creative.
So a lot of your experience has been, like you said, retail and B2C, right?
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the hardest starting off on your own, because you've got to have the capital for all of the stuff beforehand. Like it's almost like it can't fail. And if it does fail, you've lost a lot of money, right? Investment wise. How do you, I know you said you got in a position that you had a little bit of savings. was it all savings, or did some of it come from funding and investment and stuff? And how does that process look for someone out there that's thinking, like, I want to get into this space? How do I go about getting funding? Is it like you've got a network of people already, or do you have to go out and find that? How was it for you?
It's really hard. It's really hard at the moment to get funding. So for any businesses that are going through that process, I don't think it's ever been more challenging in the current economic climate to get funding for businesses. I was lucky that I had a co-founder with me on Paused, a guy called Julian, who you both know. And Julian has had a very strong funding network. But the thing you've got to realise is that you're selling you. So you're selling your expertise, your history, your experience, your resume to an extent. And that is quite scary, because we've done a small funding round, and then we did a second, slightly, again, relatively small. We're still a startup. But I treat that as like a personal commitment, because I don't want to take money from people that aren't going to get rewarded and return on it. So I actually feel at times a huge amount of personal pressure that I need to deliver, not only for me, because for me it's probably more opportunity costs, because if I wasn't doing this, I'd be going off and doing probably something in corporate, or maybe I would have been doing until now. So for me, it's more choosing to live a different sort of lifestyle than I worked in corporate, where I didn't really worry about what was happening on the first of each month, and now I have to balance that a little bit more. But the funding, you do need that, but there's nothing worse for me than people who come for funding. I get loads of stuff in LinkedIn where I don't know people. They're like, oh, do you want to fundraise? I'm like, I fundraise because I believe in people. I'll invest if I believe in the people. I'll invest if I look at the people. I've only done tiny investments myself. But I want to invest in a belief that I think this person's going to do what they say they're going to do. And I think that's, for me, how you have to take the responsibility of taking funding from anybody. Because if you fail, yes, people take risks. They need to understand. They need to be really clear that in small startups, the chances are it's going to fail. That's the reality. And you've got to go in with that financial mindset. But as a 50-something-year-old woman, that's not really in my dictionary. I'm not prepared to fail. And so I want to make sure that I succeed for them as much as for my co-founder and me, because that's what drives me. But it is, going back to funding, it's tough. And I would advise, and there are some incentives in the UK if you can meet criteria for SEIS and EIS. I am not the expert, by the way, but you do need. There are incentives to get investment, but more than anything, I'd say only seek for any funding if you 100% believe you can make this work. Because if you can't, if you think it's going to take you a year, it's going to take 3. If you think it's going to take 3, it's going to take 5, and you need to go in with your eyes open that there's no such thing as an overnight success. So if we succeed in Pause, like I hope we will, it's on the back of me doing 30 years of hard graft elsewhere first. It's not suddenly happened. And, hats off to young entrepreneurs, but it is a tough fundraising market.
Well, that was going to be my next question about like the timeline that you've got to put in place as expectations for yourself, because even then you mentioned, if I'm going to be a success, it's like when I see you, like you're in the high street, on the high street shelves nationwide, you're selling, you're like, what is that? What's that goal look like? Like, what's that like timeline look like for you before you started? That's one. But before you answer that, actually, Hilary, I want to also ask you, like, how did you come across this idea of starting, like the actual idea? Obviously the menopause one, was it a personal thing that you were going through yourself and you thought there was this gap in the market? Although there are plenty of products and supplements out there, like what was that thing that is like, right, this is an idea, and this is an idea I'm going to put years into to make it succeed? Like how were you so convinced?
I think it was a personal story. So I think how I'm now 55, so I was probably like 50 odd when we started having the idea, and I was going through the menopause, and nobody talks about it. And I'll tell you what, when you start to talk to women about menopause, they talk to you really openly because they're desperate for this conversation. Things are progressing, but still nobody talks about being at corporate dinner and flooding. No one talks about these changes in your body that are highly embarrassing. I get irritated now that when I was younger, I carried a tampon in my bra so people didn't know I was having a period. These entirely natural bodily changes that we go through, and men go through in a different way, go through the andropause, but it's this kind of secret. And so I'd had a real problems with pain management because I had fibroids and endometriosis and polyps. I'd had an ovary removed when I was 30, so I've always had kind of gynecological challenges. And then I was just in pain. I was in pain every single month for a week, like in tons of pain. So during COVID, it was very difficult to access healthcare that wasn't COVID related. And I ended up having to go private because I had to get something fitted that they said you're on a wait list for a wait list in the NHS. And I'm like, I'm in agony, right? And I can't be productive part of society because for a week of my month, I'm really uncomfortable. And so I was lucky that I got onto HRT, and that did help, right? It did really help. And I would advise anybody going through menopause, before you look at any supplements, go and talk to a GP and be relentless in those conversations with your healthcare professional, because they should be talking to you. So that did help me, but it wasn't answering everything for me. And I was looking around, and then I thought, you know what, I'll just create it then. If nobody else is going to do it for me, I'll do it myself. And that's how it came about. And then more recently, we're slightly pivoting. It's still really important to me, menopause and perimenopause and wellness. But actually, I'm more bothered now about aging productively, because I get really irritated when people see, I am in my mid-50s. I'm not ready to like throw in the towel and go, I'm no longer a productive member of society. I feel like I'm coming in to my most vital stage of life. And so what I want to do now is I want to preserve my energy, my vitality, my health as much as I possibly can. So we're pivoting some of our brand solutions based on that towards longevity and looking at how people can age well, because I don't want to be an unhealthy 55-year-old. I'm doing a lot. I'm taking weight loss injections because I know that that's an important thing for me. But again, who's helping me with those choices? Who's helping me optimize that weight loss journey? Who's helping me become the best version of me, that as I hit 60, 65 and hopefully beyond, and I get that privilege of aging, because I think it is a privilege. It's not something we should be embarrassed by. Who's going to help me to live the best possible life I can? And so I think a lot of my inspiration for Paused is the life changes I'm going through myself, and those that I see my friends going through as well. And again, if you can't see the solution, become it, create it.
Hilary, how much of that is product and supplement and finding the right tangible solution, and how much of that is community support and understanding?
It's definitely both, and it's something on Pause that I'm really aware of, that people don't buy a list of ingredients, right? I mean, what they're expecting when they come to a brand that they know that. So I'd like to think with Pause, we're very focused on science. We try and look at very proven ingredients, but we also look at somewhere maybe there's less proof points, but we can see that things are happening. So we're launching things like NR. We look at things like saffron extract. To me, it's about, I expect if somebody comes and buys a product from my brands, that they know they're made with quality, with thoughtfulness, with precision, and with intent. That to me is a given. And I think every person who offers any sort of supplement, that's just the lowest bar, right? You've got, if it didn't work, I wouldn't launch it. So that's got to happen. I think what I've learned more of, even since we had the workshop a few years ago now, is I need to be more front and center about my role and my part of the journey. I've kind of been a little bit recessive. And actually what I'm realizing now is Paused is a kind of part of who I am and part of what I reflect back out to the world. And I think community is really difficult because you can't give health advice. I can't give health advice. That would be inappropriate. But I do think having somewhere that particularly women, not only women, but particularly women, can talk about what they're going through, because everything women do is wrong, right? You know, if women try and stay young, they're trying too hard. If women age, then they're too lined. If you look at a picture of Sarah Jessica Parker or Kate Winslet or whoever, everyone's got an opinion about what they should be doing differently as women, and frankly, they just need to tell them all to fuck off. Like, excuse my language, but it's their life. Let me age as I want to, and I want to give people the opportunity to have the choice in how they want to live their lives and how they want to do that without judgment. And I think the part of community that becomes important is like social media, which could be part of that, can be so toxic and can be so anonymous and cruel and unnecessary. And yet when I talk to fellow women and men in midlife, but women in particular, there's a massive network of support out there, but people are desperately trying to find out where to go and who to trust. And that's much more difficult to build with in this day and age of not knowing quite who to turn to in the world of social media and, you know, grey market drugs and all that sort of stuff, which I would absolutely not recommend people go down the route of. So you need to find your community, but you need to find a community that genuinely are giving you information that's helpful without judgment. Judgment is the biggest thing for me. Don't judge people, listen.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think you hit the nail on the head and saying that like there is a lot of good stuff in social media, but it's very hard to find. A lot of stuff is buried as well. And you know, one of the I think working on post with you, Wes and Ash, and that brand strategy process and the branding process to me was particularly revolutionary because it was three dudes doing a brand strategy on a menopause brand, right? And we came in fairly quite ignorant, you know, and I remember having some conversation and also being ashamed about some things that happened back in my relationship with my mom, or what boys do and say in relation to their partner, right? Or she must be on her period, right?
Yeah.
Or she must be menopausal, right? And you just brush it off and saying that one of the most important person of your life is going through something that you quite not understand, and you make fun of it. And I think it's fundamental that as you said, right? Also, the partner and the people in the closer community to a woman going through these changes are aware of what these changes mean, how to support, what to do. Daughters, sisters, brothers, sons, partners, you know, and we don't know. This is something we do not talk about in school. We never covered this thing. We went as far as like, this is a condom and how you use it. Good luck and enjoy it. And that was about it. No one talked about andropause, menopause, menstruation. None of those topics, they were covered, and they were always a taboo. In the UK, it's changing now because every time I travel, you see the ads, you see the billboards, you see that culturally there is a big shift. But in the parts of the world where I live from, like in Southern Europe, in Cyprus, it's still a taboo, and that's super damaging, and it's just a big lack of knowledge and support that everyone needs to have. Not only the women going through, but also the people around these women, which is sometimes even more important.
And I do think there's a couple of things. I 100% agree with you, Martin. I think there's two things. I don't see menopause as an illness. There's been a debate about it in that UK. I think it's a transition of your life, and 51% of the population are going to go through it, but those 51% interact with the other 49%. So it's a social thing that people go through. I don't see it as an illness. I see it as a transition that can be supported through. Lots of women go through menopause. God, I'm so hot, my glasses are sliding off. Lots of women go through a menopause without really, you know, 1 in 5 don't have any particularly bad symptoms. But for some, it's so debilitating that, and that's the challenge, that there's an organisation in the UK that we at Paws are part of called Gen M, and they do a report every year that talks about menopause and the presence of it. And they call their report the Invisibility Report. And I think that's really appropriate because even though things are improving in the UK, they're not where they should be. And I don't really kind of like to put sort of gender stereotypes in, but if this was happening to men in the way that it's happening to women, it would be much more known and much more researched. And it's still that thing that says healthcare outcomes are predominantly tested, researched, and based on male bodies, not on female psyche's hormones. And that is something that we need to change as a society. But in the meantime, we support women going through a change. I mean, we talk about men having midlife crises, but it's always, and they get mocked as well, right? So let's not pretend that they don't get that same thing. But I think with the difference with men is it's typically much more gradual. And when you talk to women and go, you know, the average menopause lasts like up to 8 years, and they're like, oh my, and they have no, and yeah, that could be, you know, you could be starting that at 35, and it might be I've got some things going off health-wise with me at the moment. They're going, well, are you postmenopausal or not? We don't actually know, because I've gone onto a marina coil, and so you can't tell. And so you have to take it from a list of symptoms and make judgments. So part of the issue with menopause is it's quite imprecise, because people are affected very differently. I think it's 48 signs of menopause. And it could, for me, it was really weird things like my teeth really started hurting. I had a ridiculous level of fatigue, but most women in their 40s have probably got elderly parents, they've probably got a career, they've probably got families, and so you just put it down to getting older and being knackered. But it's not, it's a much more deep down fatigue that I felt. But I could talk to my best friend, and my best friend's a little bit older than me, and I was like saying to her, why did you not, when you were going through this, why did you not talk to me about it? Because I think I could have been a better empath for you and a better friend to you if I'd have understood that this was kind of impacting why you maybe didn't want to do some things that we would have historically done. So I think the key thing we have to do, though, is be open. And I'm overly open. I mean, I've talked to more people about my menstrual flow than is probably healthy for anybody. But I kind of feel like if I'm not prepared to talk about it, how can I help other people talk about it? And I get DMs from people, a lot of Facebook friends. And I wouldn't say that I know them well enough that they disclose their personal history, but I honestly get people disclosing to me things about their menstrual flow, about their period patterns, about symptoms, asking for advice on other supplements that they could do. And again, first port of call, speak to your GP, but it does tell you that that conversation is something that women are desperately seeking to have, and we need to be enabling it.
You know, this is so interesting, the fact that you talked about your friend who was keeping it really from you and not talking about it. And I guess that's a combination of things happening to her that she was still trying to understand. So she, and then there wasn't any story or narrative around it to not even be able to speak to a best friend, you know. But there's also, like, when Martin was talking about the part about his not understanding his mom, that's just that alone made me emotional, because I resonate with that as a man as well. And then going in, like, I'm 48, I had to think then, I'm 48. but it, like, in the 40s, I didn't know what it was, and I've been married to my wife, so, and she's not talked about it, and not, you know, it makes me sad to feel that she wasn't able to talk about it because it's not the thing to do. So my next question here is how, like, it's great that you're changing the narrative, and you've like that's the pull for you, right? In terms of starting your business, how important is that, managing that side of things with the commercial aspect of it? Like, or probably the answers in my question here, do they go hand in hand?
They do go hand in hand, but you need to remember why you're doing it, because when you run your own business, it's hard. I don't think, now that I'm on the other side of the fence of kind of being the people who are presented brands constantly on the retail side, I think if I was ever going back into retail, I don't plan to, but if I did, I think I'd understand differently, because running your own business, running a brand is really, really tough, because you are creating if you don't have that belief that what you're doing is driven by purpose and not just by product, you're not going to have the resilience to get you through the bits of crap that you have to do. Because it is, you know, I've gone from having a team of 120 or something bonkers at Holland & Barrett to I now do every single form myself. I'm fine with that. That's, you know, nobody knows my business better than I do at this moment in time. But so you have to always bear in mind that you are trying to deliver a commercial outcome, because if you're not commercial, you can't do it. But you're doing this because you're wanting people to live better. Fundamentally, that's why you're doing it. And if your products don't deliver on that front, then why would anybody trust anything else you've got to say? So they do partner, but I do think, for me, I think I actually said this in the workshop, but I loved them. I worked on number 7. Like I say, I loved number 7. It was one of the greatest jobs I've ever had, running number 7. But I did feel that at the end of it, like on my gravestone, if somebody puts "she made lips glossier," or when I was running hair care, which is another job I loved, she made hair shinier, that wasn't enough of a purpose fulfilled for me. It was something important to me, and I'm not denigrating those careers because they're all meaningful, but I wanted to feel like I was doing something that made people's lives materially better from how they approach life, whether that's about a friendship, a partnership, just living a better life, a better, healthier life with information that they need. And I don't get it right, by the way. I'm still giving myself like 6 out of 10, but my intent and my desire to make that happen for people who need that support is as high as it could be.
You mentioned your co-founder Julian. How did he buy into this story?
That was a challenge at times. I mean, Julian and I worked together exceptionally well. We're a bit yin and yang in terms of what strengths we bring to the party. So, but I think what helped Julian is Julian's sort of similar age to me, so his wife is kind of a similar age, and I think it helped Julian, a bit like you were saying earlier, Ash. It kind of helped him understand more of what his wife would be going through. He's got a daughter. He was so. I think where Julian and I have worked out where our lanes cross and where we stay in our own lanes. So when it comes to fronting the business, it's about me, because this is about the vision that I have for all of this. But Julian is kind of always in the driving seat with me. He's always that passenger piece to make sure that we're making it work for everybody. So I think it is more difficult for a man to fully understand it, but I think there is a willingness, and I think Julian in particular was really keen to understand it.
So there are many people that are a bit tired. I think a lot of people get tired of corporate, right? At some point.
Yeah.
I know lots of people that are in corporate. They're doing a lot of great work, and most of them, they have a side business, a hobby, a freelancing or something, like especially for creative people and people that they have maybe an entrepreneurial drive, that they're doing something else. Is there something that you will have done different the first time that you exit corporate, that you will have done it different right now? And I guess the real question is, if someone is thinking about it, what would you give as an advice, as steps to follow to make this exit from the safety net of corporate into the absolute fucking chaos of entrepreneurship a bit more manageable?
I think some bits are consistent. So I've always strongly believed that you build the networks in any business that you're in, and it's networks that I made partly in my corporate life that have serviced me, and I've not done them with that intent. I've just naturally built relationships because I like people and I like working with people. So your network, whether you're in corporate, entrepreneur, that's the biggest investment you can make. So if you are, and what's really interesting when you do leave corporate and when you reach out to people, you find out how strong your network actually is, because everyone says they're going to help and support and all of those things, and I can tell you that 1 in 10 actually will. But you know what? That's okay, because I would still, if those people didn't help me at the time, came to me, I would still do my best to help them, because it's a small world and what goes around comes around. And I'm very much about you get out what you put, you kind of get back what you put out. So I think your network is absolutely critical in any sort of environment. I think the biggest learning probably for me as an entrepreneur is whatever you think is going to take a year, triple it. So if we started our business, when we looked at product, and we launched product quite quickly. So we started the business in the February, and actually by October, we had product and an agreement to list in a retailer, like, so ridiculous. But actually, then you've got to make money out of it, because you've got to be in a position where, so half of this is the biggest learning for anybody going into brand, really. It's everyone thinks getting a retail listing is the holy grail. And of course that's massive. But the way I talk to people I work with is, it's a third. You need to have the energy and the drive to get the product and to get the listing. You've then got to keep the listing, because that's really hard. And you can think you've got the best product in the world, but if you're not talking to your customer, it's of no relevance whatsoever. And then the third bit is you've got to find a way of breaking even, at least, so that you can continue to invest in the product. And most people in entrepreneur world, I think, see stage one of, I'm in retail, I'm done, brilliant, I can now retire. And actually, I think that's incredibly hard. But the harder bits actually are keeping the energy, the resilience. You are going to get, for every single yes, you're going to get 300 no's, even with the network that you've got. And so you've got to just learn that resilience And what you haven't got is this safety net of 50 other tasks, and you can't divert. So when I was working in corporate, I had a list of jobs that I've got them now, but the difference now is there's only me to do them. Whereas if I'm going off on holiday next week, and I know already I'm working for at least 4 days of it because I've gone through some stuff this week and there's urgent deadlines, and I can't do what I did in corporate and put my phone off for a week and go, well, I'll deal with it all a week on Monday. I know that I'm going to be spending my holiday doing it. So that comes with it. I think you have to go into it with your eyes open. It's amazing to be a bit more in control of your own destiny, but you're still going to be beholden to other people to support your journey. And so the biggest thing is it will take more time, it will take more brain, it will take more of your resilience. Resilience is the biggest strength I think you can have. Resilience and purpose. If you've got those two things, you can probably manage everything else. But if you don't have resilience and purpose, and I had a meeting this morning with Julian and we were going through stuff, and it was like, are you excited by stuff? Because there's a lot. I'm like, you know what's great is there's a lot because we're growing. And so it's inevitable that there's a lot, because if there wasn't a lot, my business isn't doing what I need, but rely me, it's pressured because everyone is looking to you for the answer. And you have to learn on the other side of the corporate world to accept a bit more imperfection, to accept a bit more is more of a risk. And that could be a personal financial risk, or that could be other people's money risk, or that could be reputational risk. But you don't have anybody who's going to step in front of you and go, don't worry, I'll sort this for you. So you need to be, and it was one of the questions you asked me earlier, Ash, why did I do it? I think probably those things were in place for me by this stage. I think I've used my corporate career has been so helpful in building my network, but preparing me to trust my judgment, to think. I had this conversation with people in corporate, and my experience of corporate is everyone is waiting to be found out. Everyone's waiting to go, like, they're going to realise. I can remember sitting in my first meeting with L'Oreal and Procter & Gamble, like going, oh my God, I'm in a meeting with L'Oreal. And like one day they're going to realise I don't know my arse from my elbow on any of these things that they're asking me. And somehow they never seem to twig it. And then when I talk to more people, I realise that everybody in that room is scared of exactly the same thing. But in a corporate world, you're slightly protected from that because there's layers of management and there's layers of structure and there's layers of consensus. But actually, when it's you sitting having a conversation with a team, that's all gone. So they might find that competent. That's how it is.
Yeah, so true. It is fascinating. And, I mean, we're all entrepreneurs in this call, right? And I think it is fucking hard. Like for me, I feel like there are either amazing days or terrible days. There is nothing in the middle. It's a roller coaster, And many times I find myself to get a win, and you get the dopamine, that hype, you get that win, but it lasts so little because there is such a long list of other things to shit. And exactly what you said, what's next? So, and once you normalize that, it becomes a bit sad, because you normalize the fact of having a win and the realization that actually there is so much more to go, that win, it actually starts to get into a point where it doesn't mean anything. And I found myself in this situation. And I found myself in the situation of also realizing that my today's problem are my dreams of yesterday.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm trying to see it that way, to try to have that internal conversation and try to celebrate those wins. But there is no time to celebrate. You're going to hustle day in, day out, day in, day out. And sometimes, Hillary, I have a bit of jealousy for the people that are happy on corporate on 9 to 5, because I know that for me, it wouldn't be possible. I want to have the uncertainty. I want to have the push and going but I also sometimes it's tiring and it's so demanding that it's like, why the fuck am I doing it?
And the thing I would say so I'll go back to Holland & Barrett and Boots and Morrison's, and I'm not saying this is good, but none of those corporate jobs I had were 9 to 5 either. So they were all 8 to 8 weekends long. So that you do need a ton of resilience in corporate world as well. The difference is, I think you have a safety net. It doesn't feel it at the time when you're doing those jobs. You don't think you don't feel lucky to have that safety net. But I mean, I didn't have any side hustles when I was working in corporate because I barely had time to get the job done that I had to do. But I do look back now thinking I wouldn't change it for the world, right? I wouldn't change it back. And I've said now that's not, I don't want to go back into that space. But it is, you do literally go, like when we got our first retail listing so early, and then go, great, okay, who are we going to talk to now? What's the next product? And so you don't really give yourself that moment of celebration. Whereas I can remember when I was relaunching number 7, and we did an overnight relaunch in 1,400 shops as a business. And I remember that it was still full on busy, but I did get a couple of days to go. In corporate, I think the difference is you're working towards something. So I remember this, I was talking about this, I was desperate to get this big job in one of the businesses I worked with. And I worked my bits off to get this promotion. And I got it. And then I thought, oh God, I don't want this job. But I was so focused on getting it that I never actually thought about whether I wanted it. Whereas I think in when it's your own business, you know you want it. So you do get a different sort of reward from knowing that that you're doing this to fulfill your purpose. And if I think you're really lucky if you can find your purpose in corporate. I think it's unusual, but it's possible. But I think you're much more likely to find it in shaping your own destiny and future with all the pains and tribulations that come with it.
Yeah, and that's one of that self purpose is the thing that keeps you going more than anything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You just mentioned the excitement of getting listed. I want to go back to 2 points that you made actually. Like you had a network, you've done the work, but it's not as if like with your new businesses that you started yourself, getting them into shops, getting them on the shelves, it's still not easy, even though you've got those networks. It's not going to be, oh yeah, Hillary, we've known Hillary for a long time. She's nice
of it. Yeah.
Lovely. Let's put our products on our shelves nationwide. It obviously doesn't work that way. So how do you get the products on the shelves? Simply. What is it that you have to go through in terms of convincing them?
Well, first and foremost, you need to have a really, so in the sector I'm in, which is wellbeing, you need to have a really strong product portfolio, which means understand your customers. And if you're working with retailers like Holland & Barrett and like Boots, the one thing that they are very focused on is this servicing our customer? Is this what our customer is looking for? So before anything, you have to ensure that your products are relevant to your customer segment. And it sounds really obvious, but I work a lot trying to understand where I think those customers, I look at myself and my own life, but also making sure that I'm researching that that's something that I think that retailer is going to resonate with. So the one benefit you do get is you know some senior people, but I tell you for nothing annoys you more as a buyer than a boss coming down going, talk to this person. So I made my way not to do it in that approach, because to me, whilst you can do that, in my experience, it's typically better to talk to the manager or the buyer or the person. So you do your research and you work out who they are. But of course, the benefit you do have if you've worked in them is you understand the commercial model that needs to work for them. You understand how you are constructing your product, constructing your proposition so that it's fit for the retailer that you want to talk to. So it's not a magic formula. And I mean, I started off conversations with both two retailers at the same time, and one went live a year earlier than the other. I mean, I'm now excited that in the next 4 weeks, we're launching 6 new products with Holland & Barrett going into some of their shops around in the longevity space that I genuinely think are game-changing for us and brilliant for the H&B consumer. But again, it's not like I talk to the buyer and they go, yeah, this is what you want. That just doesn't exist. So you have to understand what you have to understand their business. You have to understand their market. You have to understand that you're putting together a commercial plan that can work for them and also give you enough wriggle room, because the people who make most money out of brands isn't the brand. It's typically going to be the retailer if they're very big, powerful retailers. And the other thing this sounds really bonkers, but the other thing is, if a buyer asks me for something, I make sure I give them what they need as quickly as possible. And I don't mean money, because that's always negotiation. But if a buyer's wanting me to complete a form, if a buyer's wanting feedback on this, if a buyer's wanting that, you just become the very best person that you can be to service them. Because I'm not getting favors because I used to work for them. I'm getting the benefit of understanding how they operate and how do I make my buyer the best buyer in that business by giving them what they need, because that will amplify my brand. But that's So did I have the benefit of knowing a couple of the people in both Boots and at Holland & Barrett? For sure. They're not the people I had the negotiations with and the conversations with about my ranging. They were different people. And I was very mindful not to do that top-down thing. Maybe naively, to be honest. Maybe I could have gone in and spoken to the people that I knew, but that's not how I do business.
Yeah.
That doesn't resonate with me. And I didn't like it when that happened to me in retail. So I've tried to be the type of brand that I liked when I was in the buying functions.
Oh, it's interesting. I think one of the things that resonated really with me is you talked about network. We talked about building your personal brand. And it's not about building an influencer brand. It's about building an authentic persona in order to attract the opportunities that you want to attract. Whether you're in corporate and you're climbing the ladder, whether you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur, whatever, it's one of the most important assets, right? To build a personal brand that people will know you, they will resonate with you, you will attract the right people, and you never know what you need. So one of the things that we're trying to always do with our workshop, with our personal brand, with our brand development, is to help the people get out of their comfort zone and go and meet people, talk to people, connect to people, because you never know, right? Some of this connection will turn out useful in 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years. And I think it's super important. And the other realization that I got while doing this work and building my own personal brand and helping other people build their own personal brand is the fact that everything in life is a chapter. And when you go into the next chapter, you will need people to help you realize that. And I found out that when you talk to people and ask for help, most of the people are actually really useful and really willing to help. So it's a numbers game, I think. The more people you have in your network, the more people you know, and the more they know about you, the better opportunities you have to get support into whatever the next chapter is.
I certainly believe that being authentically who you are is the only way that you can live your life. And take, my relationship with you, and I met Wes when he came back into the UK, and Wes and I worked together actually for a relatively short period of time in corporate, but we knew there was a connection there for us. And then we didn't work together on stuff. We caught up over a coffee, and I met, him and his beautiful oldest boy, Hudson at the time. But it wasn't really about working together for a long time. But in your head's going, Wes is part of my tribe. I know that when there's something that I need that type of skill set for, I know that he's my tribe, because I know he will bring people with him that I can trust and I can work with. And I think it's a lot of it in the network is the informal relationships, but you just have to be authentic, because
it's beautiful.
I want to work with people that believe in us and vice versa. That's what makes the world go round.
It's so true. And one of the things that I learned, and actually I learned from Ash, even before hanging out with Ash and before he became my mate and my brother, I was following his content, and I loved the way he was writing, the storytelling, everything on LinkedIn, And then I met him, and one of the first things that I told him, and I remember I met him and I say, "Oh, I'm following you, we're working together now," and we gave this hug immediately. And one of the first things that I told him, and it's something that stuck to me ever since, is that you are exactly as I imagine you to be.
Yeah.
Your person online and your person offline is exactly the same. And that made me feel so comfortable, and it changed my mind completely, because he already had a very successful LinkedIn account and a very successful personal brand. So he was what some people mislabel as influencer, right? But when I met him in the same room, face to face, he was exactly the same person. And that was when I started to make the connection of what is a good personal brand and what is a bad personal brand. A good personal brand is a person that you feel like you know online because of the content that they portray and the way that they are. And it's exactly the same offline. And I think that is magical. And I think that is the difference between building a personal brand because you're a practitioner, you believe into something, you have a purpose, you have a vision and a mission, versus being an influencer because TikTok is cool.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't understand TikTok, but I agree on everything else. I'm still trying
to You will absolutely fucking rock on TikTok.
We were just saying in the background, like, you should be vlogging everything that you're talking about, all your days. Like, they would be brilliant channels for you to live in.
You as you are, definitely talk about as a vlog, it will be amazing.
Well, that's that. Let's have that conversation when I understand more about how to access my account. And I put like 4 posts up, and I go and follow random things like Outlander at the moment. So I will learn TikTok. I'm all right on this stuff. But I do 100% agree with you. Like, there's a role for influencers. I'm not ever negating that. But I could personally never ever endorse something that I didn't believe in. It's just in my wheel.
I'm not shitting on influencers. There are good
No,
ones.
they do a good job. Yeah.
They do a good job, and I think a lot of brands they make it or break it because of this as well. And I have a lot of influencer friends that are doing a terrific job, but all of them are authentic, and all of them I will never see them making a deal out of money that will damage their reputation and their personal brand and their purpose. Right? Those are the good ones. Again, it's a very thin line. And what you said before is about purpose, right? Will doing this influencer partnership help me build my personal brand and activate my purpose? Yes or no? And that will be the guidelines.
And I think whilst we talk about the difference between corporate and entrepreneur, actually the secret to success is the same across everything, which is you have a different reason in terms of when you work for yourself. But if you can be yourself, whether you're working in any environment. So I do quite a lot of voluntary work. I'm chair of a charity in Chesterfield that I'm really passionate about, which is about bringing the arts into the community. Those of you who know me, I'm a huge Derby County fan, and I'm chair of the first chair of the supporters board. But I like the fact that it's a female supporters board, and so you bring your passion. And again, what I love about that is that's 2 things I'm passionate about that are nothing to do with my career.
So good.
You can build relationships with people in a way that hopefully is positive on things that you care about outside of wellness and everything else. It gives you a complete and more holistic life, and I love that. And I think that's, whilst I sometimes wish I didn't have lots of meetings, it's also really fulfilling to think I'm trying to bring some of my lessons from my business world into things that hopefully are helping things I have passion for.
Yeah, and it's still you. You know, I had this very interesting question. I was doing like a keynote a couple of weeks ago in one of the events here in Cyprus, and this lovely lady, and we were talking about personal brand and LinkedIn and how to leverage your personal brand. This lovely lady asked me about like, yes, but like my corporate world and my personal brand, they're 2 different things, right? How can I create content on both that works? And I said, I think the first mistake out of this question is actually the question itself. Like, why is your corporate self and your personal brand and the personal profile you're building on TikTok and Instagram different from what you are? Because I love B2B and I love working with corporate, and I actually found out that some of the most brilliant, creative, emotional, empathetic, and smart people are in B2B, are in corporate. B2B and corporate is not boring. It's not unempathetic, and it's not just numbers and Excel and spreadsheet. And there is a huge yearn for people working in those environments to have this authenticity, to be able to be themselves. And I have some of the most beautiful conversation in B2B talking about hip hop and dogs and cycling and running, you know. But there is this stigma, right? That corporate and B2B is boring. You shouldn't be talking about this stuff. You shouldn't be merging the 2 worlds. 9 to 5 in the office is one thing, and then when you're out of the office, the other. And I think it's simply not true.
I don't. If you're working, look, people who work in corporate, it's not easy. I don't go corporate was easy and entrepreneur is hard. They both have different challenges. But if you're doing any job and you're not living as your authentic self for those 10 hours every single day or whatever it is that you work, it's almost impossible to live up to consistently. And I don't think you get as much pleasure and enjoyment from it. I'm going on holiday after this, right? I'm driving down to the south coast, and I'm going with 2 people that I met when I worked at Boots, and they've become 2 of my very best friends because when I was working at Boots, it was a real work hard, play hard culture. And I still have dinner with people who worked with me and who I worked for years and years ago, because you build those connections by being yourself in whatever environment that you're in. And that's actually one of the things I think people miss a little bit in this slightly more remote working world. You do miss out on some of those opportunities, because I will be forever grateful for the friendships I formed and the relationships I formed from being in that corporate. Oh my God, we've got to rebudget in 10 hours and don't they know what they're telling us and all of that. So it's a different style. But if you're not authentically you, I don't know how you put the front on. I don't know how
Yeah,
you
it's so true. I tell to all my workshop participants when we're talking about personal brand that like the best thing that happened in my life in the last 10 years is connected to me starting to be authentic with my personal brand, professionally and personally. The person that I meet, it started from me portraying myself as I was, which is exactly what you said. And the fact of like having best friends and going holiday out of that, that's just priceless.
Yeah. What else is there?
That's
Yeah.
so Hillary, that's a great segue into the last question, and Wes would not forgive us for not asking it, right? And so more about your personality. What do you sing in the shower?
Well, you know, I do quite a lot of singing, right? It's kind of one of my hobbies. I do a lot of musical theatre. Depends what mood I'm in, but I have to say my go-to happy song for anything is "Video Killed the Radio Star." Just so you can get it.
Kill the radio star.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
It's because you can't feel miserable when "Video Killed the Radio Star." You just can't. It's impossible. So that would be my go-to.
Brilliant.
Good trick.
Yeah, we're on the hour now, so that was such a great conversation. Like we've spoken to you so many times, but like I've learned even more about you. So yeah, brilliant. Thanks again, Hillary.
Always love catching up with you. I'm sorry that Wes.
Thank you so much.
See you both all soon, hopefully.
Yeah,
Hillary, where can people find you if they want to interact with you? What's the best place? Where do you hang up online?
So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So Hillary Leem on LinkedIn, and of course there's the website. But LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to network because I enjoy it. Except for the people who connect with me and immediately ask me if I want to move on my business to them, then I like
payment providers.
Good network on LinkedIn is always the way I go, and following people, and obviously I follow you guys on LinkedIn.
so only DM Hillary if you want Derby footy ticket.
or if you like Buggles.
Yeah.
Or menopause advisors.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Hillary, and have a lovely holiday.
Thank you. It's nice to see you both.
Enjoy. Thank you. It's always good to hang up with Hillary, huh?
Was that the first time you met her after the workshop then?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Crazy, isn't it? Like, it's been that long.
We had follow-up calls, but it feels like yesterday. I feel like yesterday we were in Nottingham in that room.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then Mojo night out.
yeah. What happened in Rome though?
Nothing happened. It was very quiet night in Mojo.
Right. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Who's on in 2 weeks' time?